Oh, the video of me running away with a Tiger Lake wafer. What's your minimum specification? So today, Intel has offered me the opportunity to interview Lisa Pearce. Lisa Pearce is the head of Intel's software and GPU driver teams, and knows exactly what's going on with Tiger Lake, with XeLP, HPG, HP, and HPC. She leads the team that deals with the interface between the hardware and the software stack. So we got an opportunity to quiz her on a few things, particularly focused towards gaming, but also an angle towards developers. So, Lisa Pearce, Intel Software VP, what is your full title?
Well, how about the manager of the driver team for GPUs? That's maybe a simpler one.
That's perfect. So today I'm interviewing Lisa. Lisa, if you've got any thoughts, projections for software, Lisa's the person to go to because she will strike the whip to get stuff to happen. I'm going to use today an opportunity to ask Lisa a few questions about the Xe driver and software stack and portfolio. Nod to gaming, just because the audience loves a bit of gaming chat. But Lisa's also in control of high performance computing, integrated graphics, and everything in between. I think Raja said it best when he said teraflops to petaops. That is the scale for your software remit, isn't it?
Yep. More interesting than ever because of that.
So to start with, so from a gamer's perspective, we already have some software strategy with the XeLP, integrated graphics, and the new Iris Xe Max, now discrete GPU. What does Intel's software and driver strategy look like as we go into the more sort of bigger discrete options and then high performance computing here?
Yeah, well, we've been spending, 2 decades now on integrated graphics, and getting to the point where stability's there. We feel like we have a strong driver base, and now it's about running fast on performance, agility, and releases. And you saw a lot of that last year with getting Day Zero drivers for the first time. We wanted to get a pace where we're consistently releasing and striking that balance between someone who really wants stability and someone who's running fast at the new game off the shelf. And so a lot of the capabilities that you could see, instant game tuning, Day Zero driver releases, we're getting that engine running. That we know is critical for client gamers especially. And I think you'll only see that increase in the next year as we get some of that game releases earlier, tuning earlier, and then of course servers, a whole new ball game beyond that. Yeah.
So would you say as we move from, say, a Gen ecosystem to an Xe ecosystem, that software in this instance is now becoming a truly first-class citizen of Intel strategy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a major change for us, right? Software first. And, when we try and have that driver base that looks across, you want to start with the workloads and what you're seeing, and that driving your plans for the future. It's a much different mindset. Yeah, software first mindset.
I mean, you just mentioned a Day Zero game support, which is something we've kind of started to experience with Gen and the new Xe. So can you talk us through how that strategy is going to evolve as it respects to gaming and driver updates, and how Intel is committed to sort of like a regular driver update schedule?
Yeah, so the driver update schedule is an interesting one. So I'll tell you our blunt mindset, which is release when you have something to release. So I don't know if we will do something where it's just on a fixed cadence. We tend to be pretty often that we're posting, but we want to post with purpose. We don't want to just post just because it's the time. So we've been trying to make sure we bring kind of quality drivers, optimal drivers, and we built an engine so that we can release anytime we can, right? The cadence is there. That's a major change we made in the last year and a half. And so, to us, it first started, more frequent releases. Then you want, good functionality, good tuning. Then at some point you want to be able to say, can I decouple some of my tuning from my driver delivery, which was instant game tuning. So we're trying to build that up piece by piece. And ultimately build the engine so we can throttle releases any way we need it.
If I can offer one suggestion, driver updates are sometimes difficult to follow on the dates.
Absolutely. Yeah. Interesting to bring that up. We did almost change that. We held back. So I'm curious. Yeah. It's very good to know if it's easy to know, hey, it's March, April, May, as soon as is the input. Absolutely. So, we're working on that. That's all I can say. So we have, one of the things that you'll notice is we have a completely chronological build order, We have one trunk, we're releasing from that. You always know it's an ever increasing driver base. We don't have old branches where really some, point fix, but we do want to make it easier to know, what month, what timeline is that. Good input, Ian. Thank you. Yeah. It's definitely been on the mind. I think the challenge is, our integrated graphics base is very tied to our current numbering system. And so that's what we've been trying to work through. Yeah.
I mean, speaking about that integrated graphics space, I mean, we've got gen graphics in hundreds of millions of devices, and developers are very familiar with that architecture and the tools. How much of a paradigm shift is it going to be to move from a gen to an XE ecosystem? How involved is Intel going to be when it comes to teaching developers on how to optimize for the new hardware?
Well, if you look at it, it's still GPU, right? So on Windows aspect, like the APIs are still similar. So I think for a developer, it's more about local memory tuning, or when we have a deep link scenario, that's going to be the guidance. But still, the developer is generally looking at a GPU and the APIs that they've always seen. Underneath, it's very different. So we'll expect to see a lot of consistency in how they go and move over to XE. And there is a very strong engagement with the application vendors, developers on tuning. And most of the aspect is the balance when you have multiple GPUs in the system.
And you've mentioned recently about conversions from CUDA and OpenCL through to XE and oneAPI. That going to be a learning process for those developers as well?
Yeah, I would expect it to be, but I would say I'm not the best person to speak to it. Jeff would be, because he's in the middle of that porting. We kind of see it as it comes to level 0. So we have the benefit of looking at kind of the back end of it. So the beautiful part of being in the driver space. So Jeff could offer a lot more on how he sees the trend there.
But the idea is to make sure that everybody is catered for regardless of what GPU, XPU
Correct.
is needed.
And make it easier out of the gate to get applications over to oneAPI. And then obviously you can do more tuning, kind of deeper touch into a certain XPU if you wanted to tune it, right? But out of the gate shouldn't be such a heavy lift.
So for users who haven't heard of it, oneAPI before, can you give sort of like the brief overview of what Intel's vision, what oneAPI is and what Intel's vision is for that?
Yeah, ultimately you want to have one platform that you can say is really the contract for developers. It's something you can rely on to be consistent interfaces, consistently evolving and compatibility, and work across a different heterogeneous compute. So it's trying to have a complete suite that's not one hardware vendor, it's not one OS, it's not one narrow usage. It's really, a critical framework for developers over the years on XPUs.
So develop your code and then compile it for the target you want, and you can just change your targets at will. That's kind of the ultimate goal,
isn't it? That's the ultimate goal. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. Yeah.
So with XE, we know that there are going to be 4 XP variations, LP, HPG, HP, and HPC. How much opportunity is there for synergy between the driver stacks and the development tools between the 4?
Well, the driver stacks is one driver team and one code base across all of that. So it's not separate teams. It's not a separate code base. There will be consistently an underlying plumbing, let's call it. And so it is one driver base. Now the developer tools above that, is trying to have one consistent aspect of developer tools for the GPU. Obviously there's some unique things when you look at a pure compute versus a rendering usages. So there will be some catering of the tools required based on each of those and in those toolkits. But there's no separate team. So our compute is consistent across from integrated all the way through to HPC. There's obviously some changes sometimes in kernel mode drivers, other parts of the tuning or tools, but the fundamental IP is shared.
So one of the fundamental aspects of developing new GPUs, integration of these teams with each other as we go across the 4 areas of XE. But has Intel been able to scale the size of the driver team to meet the demands of, these high goals over the next 12, 24 months? Are you still hiring hand over fist? I think that was what I heard at one point.
Hand over fist. Oh, wow. Yeah. No. Well, I would just say that we have a methodology to say, be smart about how we approach our software stack, be thoughtful about how we validate it. And one of the reasons you saw us move away from, we had long-term branches in our code base previously, and we got away from that at the end of, I would say end of 2018. And it's because we knew we had to prepare for this moment. So to us, it wasn't that scaling on the base of resources. It was being smart about our approach. And that's what's really enabled us to go and achieve this span.
So one thing Intel has mentioned is the plan to, develop its open source Linux driver stack. And so how will this work, with their expected rollout timeline? Should we expect, immediate day zero support for the hardware for Windows and Linux, or are there going to be other factors involved?
So our goal, I think you're talking first on client.
Yes.
Yeah. So for client, we would expect that every PRQ, right? We have a PRQ for our hardware. We have a PV for our driver. You have a Windows and a Linux stack, and Linux enabled and open source. Now, how much we can achieve of same performance up front is the next challenge, right? So we saw on Tiger Lake, actually the Linux driver PV was right after Windows. And now we expect that also the tuning, the performance, local memory tuning is also right there. So that's what we expect going forward.
One of the criticisms with current driver stacks from Intel and AMD is that the size of the driver download is getting ridiculous. Upwards of 300-400 megabytes due to bundled software, and the fact that you're supporting 7, 8, 9 generations of GPUs all within one download. Is there anything you can do to make this process more streamlined in future?
Yeah, so we're looking at it. I think that if you look at the full package size, I would say we weren't, we keep a watch across us and others on the total size. I think the issue is this one monolithic package. So we are looking at having partial driver binaries in the future, and I can't say that we have explicit timeline yet, but we are looking into that. And at the same time, really changing our installer. So you'll see that kind of later this year, early next year, changing our installer interface was needing some updates. And so that'll be coming very soon, but hopefully also not having just a full monolithic driver download. And then you get the pieces you need as well. Yeah.
I mean, all of this ties into Intel Graphics Control Center. And there are some environments where IGCC isn't there, for Linux or in the cyber cafe. And this is kind of the driver where you do those day zero game updates. So is there any way to utilize those updates when you don't have access to IGCC? Are you planning to do independent, updates for downloads for those sorts of users?
Yeah, we've been trying to consider more cases, or it's easy to go do that pull. I'm not sure if it's in outside of IGCC or inside. We've been trying to look at that. Definitely for any kind of Windows usage, we target IGCC. For Linux, we really need to decide on a path. We've been really kind of pulling the community of what's most interesting to you. And I know it's been asked for a while. I've always wanted to do something for Linux there. So I think it may be a more simplified version. Obviously, there's some different dynamics for Linux and what you want in the UI, how you look at P&P, maybe how games are handled, and we'll be taking a look at that next year.
Intel's competitors in the graphics space have their own suites of gaming features that they work with developers to accelerate, tessellation, hair, even, ray tracing, just optimized code bases and libraries. And, they get joint promotion. What's Intel's strategy there? Is Intel going to start developing its own code packages to help with games? Or is it going to push for more standardized support and libraries based on industry standards?
Yeah, it's a general methodology. We'd always start with consistent APIs and standards. Of course, we're always going to look at, is there a reason that that's holding something back and assess it, but we'll always start with the industry standard APIs and packages, for sure.
As we move into 2021, we're going to start talking about, discrete graphics options for gaming and client, beyond sort of the Iris Xe Max we already have. Can you talk to if Intel is integrating with game studios that are planning to launch AAA games, and whether it's working with performance optimizations in the driver stack to deal with that?
Yeah, we're trying to engage earlier and earlier, and at some point into the engine space, and there is active discussions there. Now, how much optimizations we can put up front? We're just pushing in that space. First, it starts with having an optimal high-end GPU, and then you can go build more momentum there. So yeah, it is a heavy focus.
We've got Tiger Lake out in the market. We've got Iris Xe Max, and then HP, HPG, HPC coming through 2021, 2022. Some of these deadlines are fast approaching. Would you say that your team is sweating a little to ensure seamless launches?
My team will say they're always sweating a little. There's no time for rest. It's an extremely exciting time, is what I'll say. Extremely exciting time. And we're very eager, we're very excited, and yes, it's intense. And we love it that way. We love the challenge.
The current thinking when buying a competitor's graphics is that maybe I'll use it for gaming, or maybe I'll develop, compute software for it and run on the compute side. Should a user want to, is there opportunities to program DG1 for compute? Will users just be able to pull the oneAPI stacks and then just go and use that specifically for a compute task rather than a gaming focused task?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the reason we put Level Zero also on our Windows driver as well. So it's been in the Windows driver since end of March, early April.
Yeah, can you explain what Level Zero is?
Sure. So Level Zero really is our hardware abstraction layer for XPUs, and the first one will be the GPU. It's a spec not intended just for Intel products as well. You can see it in the open source repository. So all the fine-grained controls for GPUs, FPGAs, and others as a consistent hardware abstraction layer across OS, and really the backbone for oneAPI at the device layer.
We're seeing some use cases where users will use multiple GPUs in a system and multiple GPUs from different vendors, either for use in accelerators in gaming or accelerators in compute. Have you considered this approach, and will the drivers play nicely with other vendors? Is that part of your testing for every release?
Yes. And, it already plays nice in some degree, as they have had multiple, our driver has been paired with others on the system for some time. Obviously we're increasing that testing now with discrete as well. And also an Intel plus Intel combo, not just, other combos. And you can see a lot of that starting with Deep Link as well, for the Intel plus Intel combination.
We don't expect the first hardware launches from Intel to necessarily, say, be VR focused. Are you looking at that market? The products built with a VR focus in mind? Because that's also a professional use case. How is Intel approaching its strategy in order to enable developers in VR?
Well, there's been a strong investment on VR generally. I think now as we get into higher performance GPUs, that'll absolutely be a target for next year.
And another one of Intel's key targets is going to be cloud gaming, as well as cloud compute. What would be the Intel plus point for customers looking to buy that sort of solution? What can Intel bring to the table? Whether it comes to virtualization or security, how is Intel aligning with the large CSP customers?
Yeah, we have, the broad software stack enabling container stacks, the security that we would have on client, same touch with how we do firmware updates, DRM security, backing. So you would expect this a full stack and trying to optimize that full stack. I think that as we go and push through that, people will see the performance that can be achieved there. And it's really taking that hardening we had, previously for generations and bringing it to those solutions for CSPs. But, the software enabling, you saw as we talked about today on the releases and how we're doing releases for the distros, it's building out and it'll continue to build out, which I think is a key aspect for them.
Is there something that you want the public to know that necessarily hasn't been focused on with regards, the driver approach and Intel's strategy?
Yeah, I think that the thing that we'd want everyone to know is that we are preparing for the scale that's in front of us. We're eyes wide open, and we know we're coming from a strong base, doing integrated graphics for 2 decades. And we are so eager to go and unleash that in all these different segments. And so we're more excited than ever. We know it won't be easy. We know the challenges ahead. We know where we're coming from. And we just can't wait, really to show the hard work that's been happening, inside the Intel walls. We're very eager to show that.
I noticed there's an Odyssey backpack behind you.
Yes.
The whole Odyssey framing, it was very fast paced for a while before launch of Tiger Lake, and then it kind of slowed down. Do you know what's next for the whole Odyssey plan?
Yes, stay tuned. I was just talking about it yesterday. So, I think you'll definitely hear more very soon. We've been hard at work in the last year. Tiger Lake, is an amazing product, and DG1 right there with it. Iris Xe Max. So, we've been, heads down and, definitely you'll hear more about Odyssey very soon. I love my backpack. I don't know about you. I use it all the time.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, Lisa.
Thank you
much
so much.
Appreciated.
Ian. Yeah. Great talking to you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Again, a big thank you to Lisa and her team for their time. It's all really interesting to hear where this is going, especially as Intel tries to move up through the whole GPU system, and we're going to get something that's high performance. Fingers crossed. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to know about more videos in the future. And what's your minimum specification? 4 tile, 40 teraflops.